The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
You know, there are these moments in parenting that absolutely nobody warned you about. Not in the books, not in the mommy blogs, not even in the well-meaning advice from people who have already been through it. They're not the big, obvious milestones. They're not the ones that take 100 photos of and put it in a scrapbook with stickers and captions. They're the quiet ones, the sneaky ones, the ones that catch you completely off guard while you're standing in the middle of your kitchen trying to remember if you already added salt to the pasta. It's a Tuesday afternoon, or maybe it was a Thursday. Honestly, when you have as many kids as we do, the days of the week start blending together somewhere around mid-October, and they don't really separate again till Christmas. But there she was, Maddie, standing in the hallway, tucking her shirt in, fixing her hair in that mirror by the front door, the one that has a little crack in the corner that Jeremy has been meaning to replace for approximately a year. And she looks up at me and she says, "Okay, Mom, I'm heading to work." And I just stood there for a second, because in my head, I still have that very vivid memory of a tiny little girl with pigtails who used to drag her stuffed animal absolutely everywhere she went. And I mean everywhere. That stuffed animal went to the grocery store. It went to birthday parties. It went to Sunday dinners at Grandma's house. It went places that stuffed animals really have no business going. And now the same little person is standing in front of me in a work uniform, telling me she's heading to her job. Her job. At 14 years old. I cannot fully explain what that feels like as a mom, but I'm going to try, because I think a lot of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think this episode is going to hit home for a lot of families. Welcome to We Are the Hansons. Hey, welcome back everybody. You're listening to We Are the Hansons, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on what real family looks like. Not the highlight reel version. Not the perfectly curated, everybody smiling and coordinating outfits version. The real version. The loud, messy, beautiful, chaotic. Can someone please find the remote version of family life? I'm Maya, and if you're new here, let me just give you the quick version of who we are. We are a big family, like genuinely big. We have kids of various ages, grandkids coming up, cousins always around, and our house is basically a revolving door of people, food, noise, and love. It is never ever quiet. And on the rare occasions when it actually is quiet, my first instinct is to assume something is going very wrong somewhere. We started this podcast because we believe in the power of sharing real stories, real parenting wins, real parenting struggles, real conversations about the things that matter most. And today, the thing that is very much at the top of my mind, sitting at the very front of my heart, is our girl Maddie. Maddie just started her first job. She is 14 years old and she is working at Culver's. And y'all, she is absolutely crushing it. But this episode is bigger than just celebrating Maddie's new job, which, for the record, we absolutely are doing because she has worked hard and she deserves all the celebrating. This episode is about something every parent of a teenager is eventually going to wrestle with. How do you teach your kids to work hard without accidentally robbing them of their childhood? Where is the line between responsibility and overscheduling? And why does watching your kids take on a real job feel like one of the most pride-filled and heartbreaking things at the same time? Pour your coffee, settle in, let's talk about all of it. So let me take you back a little bit because context matters. And I think this story is better when you understand where it came from. Maddie has always been someone who notices things. I don't know exactly how else to describe it. Some kids are dreamers. Some kids are doers. Some kids are the ones who immediately take charge of every situation. Maddie is an observer. She watches how things work. She pays attention to details that most people walk right past. And for as long as I can remember, she has always wanted to understand the purpose behind things. When she was younger, she used to ask questions like, but why do we do it that way? About everything. Why do we set the table like this? Why do we do all that? Why do we go to that grocery store and not the other one? Why does that sign say what it says? She wasn't being difficult. She was genuinely curious about how the world works. And I think that curiosity is exactly what led her to this moment. Because at some point this past year, Maddie started noticing something. She started noticing that there are things she wants, things she'd like to have, experiences she'd like to be part of. And she made a very Maddie kind of observation, which is that those things require money, and money requires work, and therefore she needed to find a way to work. I'm not going to pretend that the conversation happened in one neat, tidy sit-down discussion at the kitchen table. That is not how anything works in our house. It happened in pieces, little bits here and there. A comment while we were driving somewhere, a question she asked Jeremy one evening when they were watching something on TV, a conversation she had with one of her older siblings that eventually made its way back to us. But the through line of it all was the same. Maddie wanted to work. She wanted her own money, and she wanted to learn what it felt like to earn something entirely on her own. When she told us she was thinking about applying at Culver's, Jeremy and I talked about it. Not a long, complicated conversation, but a real one. Because 14 is young. That is not something we take lightly. And there are real questions to answer when your teenager wants to start working. How many hours are we talking about? How does this fit around school? What happens when she has a test or a project or something that has to take priority? What happens on the days when work and family life conflict? We talked through all of it, and at the end of that conversation, we decided to support her. Not because we needed her to work, not because we were pushing her out of the nest ahead of schedule, but because Maddie had made a genuine, thoughtful decision for herself, and our job as her parents is to support that. So she applied, and she got the job. I want to talk about the first day because the first day was something. Maddie had her uniform ready the night before. She laid it all out on her chair, the way she does when she's nervous about something, her shirt, her pants, her non-slip shoes, everything in order, exactly where she needed it to be. Everything. Now, I have watched this kid take tests, perform in things at school, try out for things, show up to events where she didn't know anybody. I've seen her nervous before, but this kind of nervous was different. This wasn't the nervous you feel before something you've done 100 times. This was the nervous you feel standing at the edge of something completely new, something that is entirely real, with real stakes and real people and real consequences if you mess up. She came into the kitchen that day and she had this look on her face that I can only describe as focused determination with a side of mild terror, which honestly is probably exactly the right way to feel on your first day at your first real job. She asked me about a dozen small questions, not big ones, just about the nature of work. Small, practical, logistical questions. What if I don't remember something? What if I mess up an order? What if I forget where something is? What if I'm too slow? What if? And I just kept telling her the same thing. You're going to be fine. You're going to make mistakes. And that is completely okay because it's your first day and you're not supposed to be perfect. You are supposed to show up, try your best, pay attention, and learn. That's it. That is the whole job on day one. She nodded. She took a breath. She grabbed her bag and she walked out that door. And I just stood there in the kitchen for a minute after the door closed. I wasn't sad exactly, but I wasn't not sad either. It was one of those complicated parent emotions that doesn't have a clean, simple name. Pride and a little bit of grief all mixed together. Because you are so happy for them, you are so genuinely proud of who they are becoming, but somewhere underneath all of that happiness is this quiet, bittersweet awareness that they are becoming it without you. They are walking into a room you can't walk into for them. And that's exactly how it should be. But it still feels like something. I want to take a minute here to be honest about something, because I know not everybody is going to agree with me on this. And that is completely okay. In our family, we believe in kids working. Not overworking, not sacrificing childhood on the altar of responsibility, but working, contributing, understanding what effort actually costs and what it actually builds. I grew up in a family where work was just part of life. It wasn't optional, and it wasn't presented as a punishment either. It was just what you did. You worked because working meant something. You worked because there was always something that needed doing, and you were capable of doing it, and so you did it. That was the equation. And I think somewhere along the way, in our culture's very well-meaning effort to protect children from hardship, we started accidentally protecting them from the growth too. We started confusing struggle with suffering. We started assuming that if something is hard, it must be bad for kids. And I just don't believe that.
Hey, it's Howie Mandel, and I am inviting you to witness history as me and my Howie Do It gaming team take on Gilly the King and Wallow 267's $1 million gaming in an epic global gaming league video game showdown. 4 rounds, multiple games, 1 winner, plus a halftime performance by multi-platinum artist Travie McCoy. Watch all the action and see who wins and advances to the championship match against Neo right now at globalgamingleague.com. That's globalgamingleague.com. Everybody games.
Hard things teach hard things. Struggle builds character in ways that comfort simply cannot. When a teenager takes a real job and shows up for a real shift and works alongside real adults who are depending on them to do their part, something happens inside of them. Something shifts. They start seeing themselves differently, not as kids waiting to become something, but as people who are already capable of contributing to the world around them. And that shift matters. That shift is worth something. Now, with that said, I also want to be very clear about something because I do not want to be misunderstood. Kids need to be kids. Full stop. There is no amount of work ethic, no paycheck, no lesson about the value of money that is worth trading away a childhood for. Maddie is 14. She needs time for school. She needs time for friends. She needs lazy Saturday mornings and movie nights and the kind of long, wandering conversations with her siblings that don't have to be any particular destination. She needs room to be young and silly and irresponsible in the small, normal ways that teenagers are supposed to be. Balance is everything. And in our house, we are very intentional about protecting that balance. Let me talk about Culver's for a minute, because I think it matters where she's working, not just that she's working. Culver's is the kind of place where the culture is right from the very beginning. It's clean, it's organized, people are trained to treat customers with genuine respect, not just scripted pleasantness. It is a place that takes its food seriously and takes its staff seriously. And for a 14-year-old's first job experience, that environment makes a real difference. And what I've watched happen to Maddie over the last several weeks is that she is learning things that I genuinely could not have taught her at home. Not because I don't know them, but because some lessons only land when they come from real-world experience. They do not land the same way when mom says them at the dinner table. She is learning to read a situation quickly. In a very busy restaurant, things move fast. You have to be able to assess what's happening around you, figure out where you're most needed, and move accordingly. That is a skill. That is a real, usable, valuable skill that she is developing in real time. She is learning how to communicate with people who are older than her, adults who have expectations of her as a coworker, not as a kid. There is a specific kind of confidence that comes from being treated like a capable person by people who have no reason to be patient with you just because you're young. It forces you to rise to the level they're asking for. She is learning how to push through. There are days when you are tired. There are days when your feet hurt and you've been on them for hours and there are still customers to serve and there is still work to be done. And you do it anyway, because that is what you said you would do. That is what the job requires. That is what showing up actually means. And she is doing it. She is showing up. She is putting in the work. She is earning the respect of the people around her. We get little updates here and there, little glimpses into how things are going, and every single one of them makes us proud. Our girl is doing great. One of my absolute favorite things about this whole season of life with Maddie is watching her come home after her shift. There is a specific kind of tired that comes from physical work. It is different from the tired that comes from sitting through a long school day or the tired that comes from being overstimulated or stressed. It is a clean tired, a satisfied tired. Your body is genuinely worn out from having genuinely done something. And there is a certain quiet satisfaction that lives inside that feeling. Maddie walks in after her shift and she has that tired. And she has something else too. She has this quiet pride that she carries with her that I don't think she even knows is visible, but it is absolutely. She'll come in and sit down and she'll start talking about her day, not in a big dramatic way, just casually. The way you talk about something that is becoming a normal part of your life. She'll mention something that happened, something she figured out, a moment where she felt like she finally got the rhythm of something she'd been struggling with before. And every time I listen to one of those stories, I'm struck by something. My daughter is building herself right in front of my eyes, not in the ways I can plan for or orchestrate or guide. She is building herself through the ordinary, repetitive, unglamorous work of showing up and doing her job. And it is one of the most beautiful things I have ever had the privilege of watching. Okay, I want to talk about the first paycheck, because the first paycheck is a whole thing. It truly is. I remember my first paycheck. I remember looking at my name on that and feeling this very specific sensation that I can only describe as realness. This is real. This is actual money that exists in the actual world because I showed up and I did an actual job. Nobody gave this to me. Nobody felt sorry for me and handed it over. I worked for this. This is mine. That feeling is different from any other feeling in the world. It is not the feeling you get when someone gives you money as a gift. As wonderful as that is, it is not the feeling you get from an allowance. It is something entirely in its own. It is the feeling of having exchanged your time, your effort, your energy for something tangible, and understanding, maybe for the first time, what that trade really means. When Maddie gets that first paycheck in her hands and looks at that number, she is going to understand something she couldn't have understood before. Every dollar on that check represents a real chunk of her time, her life, her energy. She will be able to look at something in a store and think, that cost me 3 hours of work. Is it worth 3 hours? Is it worth 6? Is it worth the whole check? That is not a thought most kids have, but it is a thought that changes everything once you start having it. We talk about money in our house openly, honestly, without the shame or secrecy that a lot of families attach to financial conversations. We talk about what things cost. We talk about the difference between needs and wants. We talk about saving and spending and why the decisions you make with money when you're young create the patterns you live with when you're older. But there is a limit to how much those conversations can do when they're theatrical. They become real when there's actual money involved, when it's your money, when you are the one who worked for it. Then the lesson has weight. I think it's worth stepping back and talking about the bigger picture here, the family culture that Maddie is growing up inside of. Because I don't think you can understand why we parent the way we parent without understanding where we come from. Jeremy and I have been building things our whole lives, not just businesses, though there have been those too. We have been building a family culture, a set of values that we want our kids to carry with them when they leave this house. And work ethic is absolutely at the center of that culture. Jeremy has run a business. He understands in a bone-deep way what it means to build something from nothing, what it costs in terms of time and energy and sacrifice and commitment. And he has never, not once, tried to hide that reality from our kids. He has always been transparent about the fact that good things require effort, that nothing worthwhile arrives without some version of struggle, that the discomfort of hard work is not something to run from, but something to walk straight into with your head up. And I grew up in a family where you worked, where you contributed, where contribution was expected, where nobody sat out because they didn't feel like participating. You showed up, you did your part, and you understood that the family functioned because everybody carried their share. Our kids have grown up watching us work. They've watched us build things and fail at things and rebuild things. They've watched us disagree and figure it out. They've watched us exhausted and keep going anyway. And I believe in my heart that all of that watching has taught them more than any conversation we could have deliberately designed to teach them something. Maddie is not starting her first job in a vacuum. She is starting it inside of a family story that has always had work as one of its central chapters. And she knows that. She feels that. And I think it makes her proud. I want to get real for a second because I think it would be dishonest to talk about this topic without addressing something. There is guilt. Every parent who has ever encouraged their child toward responsibility or independence or growing up in any way has felt this guilt. It sounds something like, am I pushing her too fast? Is she missing out on something she can never get back? Is 14 too young? Should I have let her just be a kid for a few more years? I feel that. I genuinely do. And I don't have a perfect answer. I don't think any parent does. I think we all just do our best to navigate the incredibly complicated task of preparing our kids for a world we cannot fully predict, while also protecting the parts of their childhood that are irreplaceable. What I keep coming back to is this. Maddie chose this. This was not something we pushed her into. She came to us with the idea. She did the research. She submitted the application. She wanted this. And our job in that moment was not to talk her out of something she decided she wanted, but to support her doing it thoughtfully and safely. There is a difference between a parent who pushes their kid into early responsibility because it's convenient for the parent and a parent who supports their kid in taking a step they've asked to take. The first one is something I'm always vigilant about avoiding. The second one is what I hope I'm doing. And for what it's worth, watching Maddie in these past few weeks, I haven't seen a kid who seems like she's missing out on her childhood. I have seen a kid who is standing a little taller than she has before, who looks at herself a little differently than she did before, who has something to talk about at dinner that is entirely hers, that nobody else in the family can claim, that belongs completely to her, that looks like growth to me, and I'm choosing to trust it. Can we talk about the rest of the family for a minute? Because I love this part of the story. When Maddie told her siblings she got the job, the reaction was everything you would expect from a house full of people who love each other loudly and enthusiastically. There was cheering. There were questions. There were at least 3 different people asking immediately whether this meant we were going to Culver's to visit her. The answer, for the record, is yes. Obviously, yes. We have already been, and we will absolutely be going again. Multiple times, because 1, we love Culver's. Their butter burgers are genuinely in a category of their own. And their frozen custard? Come on. There is no universe in which we are going to pass up an opportunity to support Maddie on her home turf and also enjoy some excellent frozen custard. But beyond the food, something really sweet has happened in our family around this. Her siblings have become her unofficial cheering section. They ask her how her shift went. They want to hear the stories. When she came home tired after a particularly busy shift, a couple of the younger kids had already made her a snack and left it on the counter without being asked. That's just who we are as a family. You show up for each other every time. And the conversations it's sparked among the kids have been really wonderful. The older ones who have already had jobs and have been sharing their own first day stories, their own nervous moments, their own memories of that first paycheck, and the younger ones who haven't gotten there yet are watching all of it with eyes wide open, starting to form their own ideas about what it's going to feel like when they have their turn. This is how family culture gets passed down, not through lectures, through living, through watching the people you love navigate real things and learning from what you see. I want to spend a few minutes on something I think gets lost in conversation about kids and work and responsibility, and that is the question of what childhood is actually for. I think we sometimes talk about childhood as if it's just a waiting room, as if the whole point of being young is to get to the part where you're old enough to handle real things. And I think that framing does a real disservice to what childhood actually is. Childhood is not a waiting room. It is a whole season of life that has its own value, its own purpose, its own irreplaceable gifts. The friendships formed in childhood are different from any friendship you'll ever form after. The way you experience wonder and curiosity and pure, uncomplicated joy when you're young is something that softens and quiets as you get older. And not all of it comes back. So when I say I believe in kids working, I do not mean I believe in kids trading their childhood for a paycheck. I mean, I believe in kids adding work to the full life they're already living, not replacing anything, adding to it. Maddie still has all the rest. She still has her friends and her family and her lazy days and her inside jokes and her late night watching things she shouldn't probably be staying up that late to watch. None of that has gone anywhere. She has added one more thing to who she is. She is now also someone who works, someone who earns, someone who knows what it feels like to walk into a room of adults and hold her own. That addition makes her fuller, not smaller. I want to close the main body of this episode by talking about what I hope Maddie takes with her from this season. Not just from the job itself, but from all of it. From the decision she made, the courage it took her to walk in on that first date, the work she put in since. I hope she carries the knowledge that she is capable, that she can show up somewhere new, somewhere unfamiliar, where nobody is obligated to be easy on her just because she's young, and she can handle it. That is not a small thing. There are adults who have not yet learned that about themselves. I hope she carries the respect for money that comes from earning it yourself. Not fear, but respect. Understanding that every dollar has a real cost attached to it and making choices accordingly. I hope she carries that habit of showing up. This might be the most important one. Showing up even when you're tired, even when you'd rather be somewhere else, even when the day is hard. There is something built into a person who learns early that showing up is non-negotiable, that responsibility is one of the most valuable things you can offer anyone, in any relationship, professional or personal. And I hope she carries the memory of this time as something she chose, something she initiated, something she was entirely, completely, 100% hers. Because when you are 14 and you set a goal for yourself and you walk toward it and you achieve it and you do it well enough that people around you notice, you learn something about yourself that stays with you for decades. You learn that you are someone who can make things happen. And that, more than any paycheck, more than any skill she picks up behind the counter, is the thing I most want my daughter to carry forward from all of this. Okay, before we wrap up today's episode, you know, we always love to share something from the Hanson family kitchen. And today's recipe is one of my personal favorites for exactly this kind of season. When you've got a teenager coming home from work tired and hungry, when schedules are all over the place, when you want something warm and sweet without turning the whole kitchen upside down, this is the one. This is our Hanson family quick chocolate mug cake. It takes about 5 minutes from start to finish. It requires almost nothing in the way of equipment, and it tastes like a warm little hug in a cup. Here's what you need, and I promise you have all of this in your pantry right now. 4 tablespoons of flour, 4 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1 egg, 3 tablespoons of milk, 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil, a good splash of vanilla extract, and a handful of chocolate chips, because life is too short to leave out the chocolate chips. Here's what you do. Take a microwave-safe mug, a big one, because this thing rises when it cooks, and you don't want a chocolate explosion in your microwave. Ask me how I know. Mix your dry ingredients first. Flour, sugar, cocoa powder. Stir them together right in the mug. Then, crack your egg in there and stir it really well, getting all the way down to the bottom. Then, pour in your milk, your oil, and your vanilla. Stir everything until it's smooth and combined. Then fold in those chocolate chips. Pop it in the microwave for about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now, every microwave is a little different, so start there and see where you're at. You want it to be set in the center, but still slightly soft on top. If it needs another 15 or 20 seconds, go for it, but don't overdo it or it gets a little rubbery. Let it cool for just 1 minute and then eat it, right out of the mug with a spoon, at the kitchen counter if that's where you end up, which in our house is where half of us seem to end up most evenings anyway. It's warm, it's chocolatey, it's deeply satisfying, and it is absolutely perfect for the end of a long day, whether that day was spent in school or at work or running around doing all the things that big families spend their days doing. We love this one. I hope your family loves it too. I have been thinking, in the days since I decided to record this episode, about what I most want to say about all of this, about Maddie and her job, and childhood and work, and the strange, tender grief and joy of watching your kids grow up. And what I keep coming back to is this. Every milestone your child hits is really two things at once. It is a beginning and an ending. It is the start to something new and the quiet close of something that was. And the job of parenting is to hold both of those things at the same time without crushing either one in your grip. We cheered when Maddie got the job. We will cheer when she nails her first difficult shift. We will cheer at the first paycheck and the first proud story she brings home from behind that counter. And at the same time, there is a part of me that will always be a little bit tender about the fact that she doesn't need me to walk through those doors with her. She walks through them herself. She always has. She always will. And that is exactly as it should be. To every parent listening who has a teenager on the edge of some version of this moment, whether it's their first job or their first independent step of any kind, I want you to hear me on this. Your instinct to protect them is good. Your instinct to cheer for them is also good. You do not have to choose one or the other. You can hold both. You can be the soft place they land when it gets hard and the loudest voice in the room when they succeed. That is the whole job. To Maddie, if you ever listen to this, which I sincerely hope you do, because Mom put a lot of heart into this episode, we are so proud of you, not just for getting the job, not just for showing up and doing it well, but for being brave enough to want something and go after it, for knowing your own mind, for walking out that door in your work shirt with your hair tied back and your chin up and your whole future ahead of you. You are going to do incredible things, baby girl, and we will be right here cheering every step of the way. Thanks so much for joining us today on We Are the Hansons. If this episode hit close to home for you, if you have a kid who just started their first job, or if you remember what your own first job felt like, we would absolutely love to hear about it. Find us on Facebook and reach out. Tell us your story, because the whole reason we do this is to remind each other that we are not doing any of this alone. If today's episode meant something to you, please share it. Share it with the mom in your life who is in the middle of watching her kid grow up. Share it with the dad who is trying to figure out how to balance responsibility and freedom. Share it with anybody who understands that parenting is one of the hardest and most beautiful jobs that exist, and that sometimes you just need to hear that somebody else gets it. Until next time, from all of us to all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for letting our family into your ears and your hearts and your kitchen while you make dinner and your car while you drive the kids to practice. We are the Hansons, and we are so glad you're here.